At my own birthday party, my parents took the stage and said, "We're so proud of your fiancé, he's like the son we never had." Then my mom smiled. "Too bad you're not pretty enough for him." I just whispered, "Right." A week later, I found out why he was late every night and I made sure everyone else did too. Phoebe looked up from her glass, still grinning at her guests. "Why is she here?" I stepped in behind the new owner and calmly said, "I'm with them, I'm their financial consultant." She blinked once, then twice. Then it hit her. "You're kidding me." "No, no, this is a joke. This is my house." The couple beside me smiled politely, awkwardly. Her expression crumbled. It was not her house anymore. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the saver. My sister Phoebe was always the bright, loud center of attention. She walked like she owned the air around her. In high school, she dated guys who drove imported cars and took spring trips to Europe. I dated a guy who borrowed my dad's truck and couldn't remember my birthday. We grew up in a middle-class home in Pittsburgh. Dad was a systems engineer and Mom was a high school math teacher. They weren't wealthy, but we never went without. Phoebe always seemed to get more, though, more praise, more freedom, more forgiveness. If I failed a test, it was because I wasn't working hard enough. If she failed a test, it was because the teacher wasn't engaging enough. By college, I was stringing together scholarships and side jobs just to stay afloat. Phoebe got a car and a down payment on her apartment as a graduation gift. That's just how it was. Still, I didn't resent her. Not really. Not back then. She was my sister. And I believed, maybe naively, that one day she'd come to understand what it was like to have to build something without someone else's help. After college, she moved to San Diego to work for a private equity firm. I stayed in Pittsburgh and landed a job as a junior financial analyst for a family-run logistics company. Not glamorous, but steady. I met Mason a year later at a library fundraiser. He was an art teacher, soft-spoken, intelligent, a little introverted. We dated for a few years, moved in together, and eventually got married. Mason's mother, Blythe, hated me from the moment she met me. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Everything was framed as a compliment, but the tone was always off. "You're so resourceful. It must be hard, not having much help from your family. I love how practical your clothes are. You don't try to show off. You know, not everyone is meant to make a lot of money. Some people have other gifts." What made it worse was that Mason never stood up to her. He'd just laugh nervously or tell me, "She means well." After we got married, she made a family photo album as a gift to Mason. When I flipped through it, I realized that in almost every group photo I'd been in, I had either been cropped out or removed entirely. I found one of the originals in her trash can. She had physically cut me out with scissors. When I confronted Mason, he shrugged. "It's just a photo album, babe." No, it wasn't just a photo album. It was a metaphor for how his family saw me as an outsider, as someone they could pretend didn't exist. Fast forward a few years. Mason and I were still married, but things had stalled. He'd been laid off from teaching due to budget cuts and was focusing on his art. I was paying the bills, managing the mortgage, and doing my best to keep us afloat. Phoebe, on the other hand, had just bought a beach house in La Jolla with her husband, Dorian. She loved to rub it in. Photos, videos, long captions about living your dreams. She even sent me a voice note once after I posted about struggling to save. "Simone, just be smarter with your money. You can't keep blaming the world for your choices." She never once asked how I was doing. She invited me to her housewarming a few months later. Glossy envelope, gold lettering. It felt more like a press release than a party invitation. I almost didn't go, but something in me was curious, maybe masochistically so. At that point, I had started doing freelance consulting work for high-net-worth clients. One of them, Ian Merrill, was an aging tech investor with a portfolio of distressed assets. One day, he slid a manila folder across the table. "This house is in La Jolla," he said. "Guy defaulted on a loan and the wife isn't responding to the notices. Think it's worth flipping?" I opened the file. My heart stopped. 8744 Neptune Place. Phoebe's address. I don't know if Ian noticed my reaction. But I did my job. I ran the numbers, reviewed the history, and saw the default notices piling up. She was 4 months behind. Her husband had leveraged their other business to finance renovations. Bad decision after bad decision. "The bank wants it moved quickly," Ian said. "I can handle it," I replied, and I did. It was all above board. I kept my name out of the sale until closing. The buyers, retired entrepreneurs from LA, were eager to get the property in time for summer. They needed a consultant to coordinate the legal handover, the insurance documents, and the removal of prior occupants. That consultant was me. The housewarming party was 2 days before the scheduled vacancy. I decided to go. I flew in quietly, stayed in a hotel, and arrived at the house just after 3 p.m., just as the buyers pulled up in their Tesla. Phoebe was at the door greeting guests, drink in hand. When she saw me, she froze. Then she smiled like everything was fine and leaned in. "Did you seriously come?" "You invited me," I said calmly. She rolled her eyes. "Well, try not to make this about you." I walked inside. Everything in me wanted to leave, but I didn't. I waited. Ian arrived shortly after. The new owners walked in behind him. I stood at their side, holding the portfolio. Phoebe's face lit up when she saw the buyers, clearly thinking they were guests. Then Ian introduced them as the new owners. That's when she turned to me and lost it. "What the hell are you doing here?" she snapped, wine sloshing over her glass. "I'm with them," I said. "I'm their financial consultant." And just like that, the air left the room. She stared at the documents in Ian's hand, the legal packet confirming the closing. Her face twisted. I thought she might cry or scream. But she didn't. She just walked away. No one said a word. The rest of the party fell apart in slow motion. Phoebe didn't come back downstairs. She disappeared, probably into one of the bedrooms, and left the guests confused, murmuring, sipping at their wine like it might explain what they'd just witnessed. Her husband, Dorian, was talking to Ian off to the side, looking pale and cornered. He wasn't the type to make a scene, but he knew what had just happened. The sale was done. The paperwork was legally binding. The new owners weren't just some buyers, they were already in possession. The party they were standing in wasn't a celebration, it was technically a trespass. I stood off to the side by the French doors that open out onto the deck. The ocean was beautiful, indifferent, waves crashing rhythmically. It almost made me forget the stairs, the tension in the air, the way Dorian looked like he was going to be sick. People started leaving. Quietly. No one said goodbye. The new owners were polite, but they didn't stay long. They were clearly uncomfortable, and I didn't blame them. After they left, I hung back to speak to Ian. We wrapped up the conversation in a low tone by the foyer. "You all right?" he asked, watching the now mostly empty living room. "Fine," I said. "It's strange, but I did my job." He nodded. "You did it well." He left, and for a moment it was just me. I lingered. I probably shouldn't have, but I had to know. I had to say something. I found her in the master bedroom. The doors were open. She was sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at her phone like she was trying to disbelieve the screen. "You could have told me," she said. I leaned against the doorframe. "And what would you have done with that information, Phoebe?" She turned, eyes red, but not crying, just furious. "You planned this. You knew this was my house." "I did. After the file landed on my desk, I didn't go looking for this. Your name wasn't even on the first documents. You wanted to humiliate me." I let that hang in the air for a moment. "No, I wanted to do my job. And maybe I wanted to stop apologizing for being who I am." She scoffed, turning away like that disgusted her more than anything else. "You always had that martyr complex. Always the poor, struggling sister who just needed the world to be fair." "No," I said quietly. "I just got tired of you treating me like I was less than you, like I was a burden or invisible." She didn't respond. I stood there for another moment, then turned and walked out. Mason called me that night. I didn't pick up at first. I let it go to voicemail. But he called again. And again. On the 4th try, I finally answered. "I heard what happened," he said. "Word gets around fast. Phoebe called my mom called me." "Of course she did. She said you sabotaged her." "I didn't. She was behind on payments. Her husband mismanaged the business. That house was a financial disaster waiting to happen." He was silent on the other end. I waited. Finally, he said, "I don't know whether to be impressed or worried." That stung more than I expected. "What does that mean?" You never told me how things were going with your new clients. I didn't know you were working on deals like that." "Because you never asked, Mason." He didn't argue. The silence between us was heavy, familiar. Like the space we'd learned to live in for the past year. "She's ruined," he said eventually. "She did that to herself." Another pause. Then, "Are you okay?" I sighed. "I will be." back in Pittsburgh, things didn't return to normal, but they settled. Mason and I continued living together for a couple more months, orbiting each other in the same house like satellites falling out of sync. We still had dinners, still talked, but something was fundamentally broken. Not in an explosive way, more like a window cracked so gradually that one day you realize the cold's been seeping in for years. I started sleeping in the guest room. He didn't protest. Meanwhile, Blythe called. Of course she did. I debated answering. I knew she didn't want answers, she wanted someone to scold. But curiosity won. "Simone," she said, cool and sharp, "I just got off the phone with Phoebe." "Then I'm sure you have the version of the story that makes me look like the villain." She ignored that. "She says you set her up, that you showed up to gloat. She's embarrassed, and maybe she should be. She mocked me for years while building her life on borrowed money. Families don't treat each other like this." I felt something hard in my chest. "No, family doesn't cut someone out of photo albums either." Silence. I could hear her breathing, calculating. "Then, you always wanted to be the victim. And you always needed someone to look down on. I'm done being that person." I hung up. I expected Mason to say something about it when he got home that night, but he didn't. I don't know if Blythe called him too, or if he just didn't have the energy anymore. 2 weeks later, I got an offer from a firm in Chicago, consulting work with flexible terms and a client list that made my hands shake. I said yes. I didn't even hesitate. The next day, I sat down with Mason at the kitchen table and told him I was moving out. He didn't argue. He didn't cry. "I think we both knew this was coming," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "I just didn't think it would happen like this." Neither did I packed slowly over the next few days. As I sorted through drawers, photo frames, and books I hadn't touched in years, I came across a smaller version of Blythe's photo album. The one from that family trip to the Poconos, the one where she cut me out of the prints. Except this version was untouched, still sealed in the original wrap. It had been tucked into Mason's nightstand. I didn't know if he meant to give it to me, or if he forgot, or if maybe he had quietly disagreed with his mother and just never had the courage to say it out loud. But it was there, and in it I was whole. Leaving Pittsburgh wasn't just about distance, it was about perspective. I didn't know how much I'd been bending myself to fit the mold of the person everyone expected me to be. Accommodating, quiet, unthreatening, until I stepped outside of that space. Chicago was cold, yes, but something about the sharpness of the city felt clean. Bracing, like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for years. The job was demanding but fulfilling. I worked with real estate investors, family offices, and more often than not, women. Women who were smart but cautious. Women who had inherited messy portfolios or were rebuilding after messy divorces. Every single one of them reminded me a little bit of myself, what I could have become, or what I had almost been swallowed by. Within 6 months, I was consulting full-time. Within a year, I'd built a niche clientele that didn't just respect me, they recommended me. I was finally making real money, not just can afford the bills money, legacy money. One morning, I woke up to an email from a development group requesting a consultation on a complicated multi-property investment. I clicked the file. One of the addresses was in La Jolla. It was 8744 Neptune Place. The new owners had flipped it. Successfully. Now a small, upscale hospitality group wanted to convert it into a 5-room luxury boutique rental for high-end weekenders. The original structure had been renovated further, and they needed someone to analyze long-term return potential. I agreed. That trip to La Jolla was different than the last one. I stayed in a better hotel, ate alone by choice, ordered seafood and wine without checking my bank balance first. I visited the house, not to make a statement, but as part of my job. The renovations were beautiful. They'd kept some of the bones, added solar, upgraded the kitchen again, and turned the upstairs master into a glass-walled suite with an ocean view. Funny how the place felt bigger without the weight of Phoebe's ego in it. On my last day there, I passed by a small cafe near Windansea Beach, and I saw her. Phoebe. Hair shorter now, face a little drawn, wearing an oversized sweater and typing on a laptop with one hand while sipping an iced coffee. She didn't see me. I stood across the street for a minute and watched. She wasn't with Dorian. I'd heard through a mutual contact that he'd filed for divorce after the foreclosure. Apparently, the business had folded too. The word was Phoebe was now freelancing as a consultant. Ironic, really. She'd landed some remote contract gigs and moved into a modest rental nearby. Her posture was different now, hunched slightly, guarded, like someone who had once ruled the room but now checked to see if they were allowed in. And I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant either. I just felt released. I walked away. Back in Chicago, I finally settled into a rhythm. My apartment near Lincoln Park was small but elegant, with a balcony full of succulents I hadn't yet killed. I'd joined a local co-op, started going to yoga on Sundays, never thought that would be me, and even adopted a senior tabby cat named Hazel. Life was quiet, intentional, mine. Then last fall, I got a message on LinkedIn from Phoebe. Subject, unfinished business. Simone, I don't know if you'll even read this, but I wanted to say something. You were right about everything. I spent so long looking down on you because I couldn't handle the idea that maybe, deep down, I was insecure. I confused privilege for success. I let our mother pit us against each other, and I wore that competition like a crown. When I saw you at the house that day, I didn't just feel humiliated. I felt seen for the first time, maybe ever. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know what I'm asking for, but I'm sorry. Phoebe, I stared at the message for a long time. And then I closed the tab, not because I hated her. I didn't. But some chapters don't need a second draft. Some endings are quieter than slamming doors, they're just stepping away. 6 months later, I was back in Pittsburgh for a financial planning seminar. One of the speakers didn't show up, and the host asked if I could fill in last minute. I stepped up, gave a short talk on legacy planning, female financial independence, and reclaiming your narrative. I used real-world examples. I didn't name names. Afterward, a woman approached me. Simone, right? She asked. You were married to Mason? It was Blythe. I hadn't seen her in over a year. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair had gone mostly gray, and she was using a cane. She wore her usual tailored blazer, but it hung a little loose on her frame now. I saw your name on the seminar list, she said. Didn't know if it was you. It's me, I replied evenly. She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photo. I found this, she said, was cleaning out some boxes. It was a copy of that old Picono's trip photo, the full version. The one with me in it, standing beside Mason with a goofy grin on my face and my arms around two of the nieces. Blythe had written Family 2017 on the back in cursive. I kept one, she said. I didn't respond right away. I'm sorry, Simone, she said. I wasn't sure if she meant for everything or just for that moment. I took the photo, not to keep, just to hold for a second, then I handed it back. No need, I said. Really, she nodded. No argument, just silence. As she turned to go, she paused. You were always better than we gave you credit for. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Success isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft, slow, quiet. It shows up in choices, in the ability to walk away, to say no, to not need revenge to feel like you've won. But if we're being honest, walking into that housewarming party as the new buyer's consultant, that was damn satisfying.